Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon video. So today I'm going to be taking a look and talking about the BT21 World Convergence release event that Bandai is hosting in celebration of BT21, the first set that is officially releasing worldwide simultaneously. So Bandai decided to change things up a little bit, and instead of a pre-release, which usually happens a week before a new set comes out, they just decided to label this as a release event, and it's coming out the same time, or in the same time frame as BT21 is coming out. So, for all intents and purposes, it's ran exactly as the pre-releases we had before, just happening as the set is officially releasing. So as far as when the set releases, it's going to be releasing on April 18th, and as far as when the time frame for this event is going to last, it's going to last from April 18th and go all the way through May 9th of 2025. And then on top of this, they're going to also have a starter deck event, which will be ran in the same time frame as this event. So kind of just going over the starter deck event real quickly, there's really not much to say about this event. So it's just pick one of the two starter decks and you're just going to play against people. It's designed to be super new player friendly, and as a result, the only prizing is going to be the participation prize, which is going to be the Welcome Tamer pack, which I believe, based on some of the past trends, is just going to be of cards from the starter deck, just stamped and or foiled. So there's not really a whole lot to say about this. It's just designed again for newer players. And as far as the two starter decks in question, they're both pretty decent starter decks. If I actually had to pick one, I would probably pick the Garurumon, not only because I like Garurumon as a Digimon more, but I think it's the better deck of the two. But the two decks are very comparable, with Garurumon being the more aggressive deck and taking a more aggressive stance, and Greymon being a more control and defensive deck. But ultimately, I really don't think it matters which one you pick. You're going to have a fun time no matter what. But as far as what we're expecting to see out of the prizing for the release event for BT21, well, just for participating, we're going to be getting an alt art version of Imperial Paladin Mode Ace from BT17, which is a highly playable and really strong super rare card. So the fact that this is our entry promo is fantastic. Then when it comes to your other participation prize, you're going to be getting your usual pre-release pack, which I guess is just going to be relabeled as a release pack. And it's going to be the same, which is going to be a foil stamped uncommon and a foil stamped rare that come from inside of BT21. Then when it comes to the Grand Poobah winner card, that's going to be a foil textured version of the participation card, which again is that Imperial Paladin Mode Ace from BT17. So this time around, it actually looks like the prizing's pretty good, mostly because the participation and winner card are really fantastic. Then stores might also throw in some additional prizing, like extra packs or whatever, based purely on the store and what they feel like they want to do extra, if any at all. So when it comes to sealed events, we do have a separate rule set for sealed events specifically. It's not anything too complicated, it's fairly simple. So you're going to be building a 40 card deck out of the 6 packs that you're given. You're not allowed to trade or anything with anyone else or use outside packs. You have to ask your store if you're able to use the promos. Then, when it comes to just some more nitty-gritty rules, players can ignore Digivolution color requirements of their Digimon, but they still have to meet the level requirement for that Digivolution, and they still have to pay the associated cost with it. Then when it comes to colors being ignored even further, you could ignore colors for DNA Digivolutions and special Digivolutions. However, you can't ignore anything that's going to be asking for a specific level, name, or trait to be met. And then when it comes to colors, it still matters on effects. So if a card is asking for a specific color in its effect, let's just say red as an example, where it's just like you have to discard a red card, you have to pay attention to the card that you're discarding because it actually has to meet the requirements in order for the effect to actually work. So you can't ignore colors when it comes to abilities, and you also can't ignore colors when it comes to options, as you still need the card on the field in some capacity in order to use the option that you're, well, actually trying to use. So that's the majority of the base rules. You're going to be playing the game the exact same, and the only additional alternative rule is the fact that during the breeding phase or raising phase, you could choose to raise a level 3 Digimon. So if you don't have any eggs or you don't want to use an egg, you could just throw a level 3 Digimon from your hand into the raising area. You won't draw for this, but it does help bypass Digivolution costs that might be a little bit higher than what you normally would want. So it just gives you more extra flexibility to be able to play your cards and utilize your strategies on how efficient you want to try to make your cards, which is always nice. Then when it comes to looking at the set, you should always be focused on the rares and below. So going into any sealed event for any type of game, rares and below are going to be the cards you're going to be seeing more often rather than some of the high rarity cards. So understanding how a booster box works in terms of the odds of seeing specific cards at specific rarities will help determine where your focus generally should be. So for Digimon, normal booster box pull ratios, which this box isn't doing anything different, we're going to be seeing an average of 7 SRs per box and 2 hits, a hit being either an alt art or a secret rare. So that's not changing in BT21, and we're going back to normal ratios, considering the last couple of sets were special sets and they had alternative ratios. So what does a normal booster box look like in terms of its average breakdown versus what BT21 is doing? So a normal or average set usually contains 106 different cards. The breakdown is here as follows, and BT21 is a slightly larger set, but it's only larger in the fact that we do have some more secret rare cards, which is going to impact the pull rates of the secret rares, and we also have more super rares, so super rares are going to be also a little bit harder to see, especially see the specific ones that you want to see. But outside of that, the lower rarity cards are all pretty much the same or similar enough to where you're not really going to see any difference between them versus any other normal set. So when it comes to deck building, because we have to build a 40 card deck, we're going to want to try to incorporate a little bit of a ratio change compared to normal Digimon to accommodate for this deck size difference. We do also have to keep in mind that all of the extra cards that we do open will end up being our sideboard cards, so in between matches and games, you could always utilize that as your sideboard to try to make your deck function a little bit better versus a given opponent or just in general. Then, when it comes to overall card analysis, there is an acronym that I like to use, and I lifted from Magic the Gathering, called BREAD, to help you figure out what cards you want to play and prioritize. So B stands for bombs. These are going to be your high impact cards, or basically your win conditions. R stands for removal. This is the ability to disrupt the opponent and clear out problematic cards that they would have on their field. E stands for evasion. These are going to be your defensive cards and the cards that have some native protection to make it harder for the opponent to win. A is going to be aggro. These are going to be your general offensive tools. And D is going to be duds. These are cards you never want to use because they're just the worst cards in the set, or they're just borderline unplayable, especially compared to everything else that you could actually be playing. So when it comes to bombs, these are usually going to be Digimon on the higher level. They're not exclusively to Digimon on the higher level, but these are going to be cards that have the highest impact and are going to swing the game in your favor, if not win you the game on the spot. Then, when it comes to removal, as I already mentioned before, these are cards with abilities to either hard remove the opponent's Digimon or soft remove the opponent's Digimon. Either way, you're trying to deal with the threat that they're presenting the best that you can in the given situation that's presented to you. So when it comes to hard removal, this is just referring to just getting rid of the body outright, making sure that there is no Digimon left on the field. So this is in the form of deletion, bouncing to hand, putting to the bottom of the deck, reducing their DP to 0, or just deleting through combat as just a couple of ways and examples. Then soft removal is just devaluing the opponent's Digimon. It's not removing it from the field outright, but it's just making their Digimon as useless as possible with abilities like Security Attack Minus, De-Digivolve, and can't suspend or unsuspend as just a couple of other examples. Then Evasion, as I already mentioned, are your defensive mechanics to help you have some extra sustainability to make sure that you could actually try to win the game and stop the opponent from trying to win the game also. But you also do have some protections that are going to make it hard for the opponent to get rid of your cards, which just puts you in a better position because it's making their card a little bit less effective. And these are abilities like Reboot, Armor Purge, Evade, Fortitude, Barrier, and various others just to make it that much more difficult for the opponent to stop whatever you're doing. So having a good balance between your offensive and defensive tools and what those offensive and defensive tools are doing on top of your removal all helps benefit the deck overall. And then when it comes to aggro, these are your, well, aggressive cards. So these are going to be abilities to help boost them to higher numbers, so that way they have some extra levels of sustainability on top of abilities that allow them to attack right of way, or just really efficiently statted cards to make it so that the opponent has a hard time dealing with them because their stats are pretty good and it was easy to use and get up into these cards. So it's not explicitly just that. There's a lot of different factors to go into what makes a card aggressive, but that's kind of like the basic rule of thumb of it. You just care about how much damage you're able to deal and how quickly you're able to deal that damage. And then the duds are going to be cards you almost never want to use because, again, there's just better things in the set. I think for this set specifically, the Venmon cards are probably some of the worst cards because they're a little bit too insular, asking for just themselves, and they're expecting you to have some of the other Venmons from outside of the set in order to enhance their overall capabilities. So if you don't have enough Venmon or Venmon texted cards, then these cards are effectively the worst cards in the entire set for you to use. So I would probably try to steer clear of them, at least the lower level ones, as much as possible, unless you do just have the Godluck and are opened up enough of them. So there's not too many duds in the set, but if I had to label anything as a dud, it probably would be the Venmon cards when it comes to the sealed and limited environment. But they're just a good example of what makes a card a dud because it needs so much going for it in order for it to be anywhere remotely useful on both halves of the card. And what I mean both halves of the card, a card has a native ability which triggers when you use the card as the card, and an inheritable ability when you're trying to use the card as an inheritable. At least some of the other cards have at least one half of those abilities that they could use and leverage on, but with the Venmon stuff, it's going to be hard to utilize them in either capacity because they're both asking for very specific things that you just might not have. Then when it comes to the Digitamas, it's obviously important to note that some of the Digitamas are going to be better than others. So the 4 I have listed here out of the 6 in the set are going to be the ones that you're going to want to prioritize the most. But the fact that you might not be able to control what Digitamas you have means you're still going to end up playing most likely with whatever you end up pulling. But there is, again, when it comes to deck building, a reason not to run as many Digitamas as possible. Yes, they do give you that Digivolution bonus so you could draw extra cards, but sometimes the cost of the rookie might not necessarily be worth it to actually run the full line of Digitamas. And then when it comes to the Tamers, there's Not necessarily a whole lot of tamers when it comes to the lower rarity options. I think there's like 3 tamers in total that you could run, and 2 of them are actually really good for low rarity tamers. The majority of the tamers are going to be in the higher rarities, which for Digimon is going to be the SR and above, so that does kind of put a little bit of a damper on things, but we still have lots of really good usability off of the more playable tamers in the low rarities that we actually have access to. And the fact that the tamers in this set are skewed more towards the color red means that our red options are actually going to be more effective and efficient than any other set when it came to how well we could actually utilize the option cards. So with this set specifically, I already mentioned that it's kind of skewed heavily towards red and the color red, so you're just going to see a lot of that color regardless, which is not necessarily the worst thing because it does increase the amount of synergies that we have, and you're always going to want to try to pick either the hyper generic cards, which are going to work regardless of whatever you're going to be using it with, or you're going to want to try to double down and focus on the specific synergies that your pool of cards is lining up, so you could try to make your cards have even more impact than before. When it comes to Ace Digimon, this set literally has 1 Ace Digimon, and it's on a higher rarity, which is the SR slot, and because of the dilution of SRs, it's actually not going to be highly seen. So I really wouldn't worry about playing around Ace Digimon because it's most likely not going to be happening, which is cool because it does up the overall aggressive possibilities that the set has, knowing that the opponent isn't going to be acing you that often. This set does have a lot of good archetypes that are trying to support deck building and make it easier for you to play with, and some of these archetypes actually have some decent cross synergies based on what they actually are, because not all of the archetypes are supported equally, and some of them are supported better based on what the archetype is. So some of the more notable ones is the hero trait. Reptile and Dragonkin and Atmon are going to be the archetypes you're going to want to try to lean and leverage the most compared to any other archetype in the set. Then when it comes to the overall format of how this is going to be playing, I think that based on the cards and the tools available, this is definitely going to be a more aggressive style format when it comes to what's inside of the set and how we're going to be utilizing it, but it also has a slew of different control aspects, so we're really going to be fighting for the board more than anything, but we're still also going to want to try to be as aggressive as possible, knowing there's not as many defensive tools to stop us from just trying to get as many chip shots in as possible when we necessarily can't control the field. So I think this format is actually looking to be pretty fun. It might not exactly shape out the way that I think it is, just because of how much removal there actually is in the set compared to the lack of defensive options. So that's kind of why I think we're going to be trying to fight for the board more often than not, and whoever wins that race is most likely in a position to win the game, because it doesn't really seem like there's a whole lot of instant win buttons in this set particularly. So as far as some general meta tips, based on past experience, this is kind of where I think when it comes to pre-releases, we generally have 2 styles of meta. We're either going to be leveraging it more towards a aggressive style meta or a more value and tempo styled meta. I think that there is validity in both of them for this set more specifically, and as far as which direction the format is going to lean, really just it depends on what types of tools are going to be inside of the set. But either way, this is looking to be a pretty fun set to build for this sealed style of event. And then when it comes to just some other general tips, you're always going to want to be as prepared as possible, not only physically, but mentally. So make sure to bring some water, snacks, and supplies. This is not necessarily a super sweaty, hyper-competitive event, so relax and have fun. That's the whole point of these style of events, is just give us a different way to be able to approach and play the game. And then when it comes to some just general deck building tips, you're going to want to ask yourself a couple of questions when going into deck building. But that's all of the general advice that I have for this event. I hope everyone has a wonderful release event. And if you enjoyed this type of content and want to see more, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you can stay up to date when I go live next. And with that, I wish everyone the best of luck in their events. I hope everyone's pulls are as blessed as possible, and I'll see you all in the next video.